In part one of a four-part series detailing Afghanistan's future, Vonda Felbab-Brown identified the problems leading to Afghanistan's plight. In part two, she draws on her conversations with the Afghan people who are hopeful but leery about the nation's future.
One of the things that has been extraordinary really about the decade of the very intense effort in Afghanistan is the continuing discrepancy and vast divergence in perceptions among Afghan people of what Afghanistan is like, how the country should be developing, and perceptions from the country's government, from Afghan's government, as well as perceptions from Washington. Overall, Afghan people tend to be far more skeptical about the success that has been accomplished and about any possibility of future success. In fact, many ordinary Afghans believe that there is a very high likelihood that another civil war is coming after 2014. Many people are deeply skeptical that the Afghan security forces will be able to hold the country together. And they continue to be profoundly dissatisfied and unhappy with the corruption, the power abuse, the crime that they see happening around them all the time. I mean, it's quite strikingly different from the perception of the Afghan elites, who are these days predominantly focused, as they have been, on both immediate political survival, and there is a great deal of fear as to what will happen once the international presence is reduced, as well as immediate power and profit maximization. And it's even more different, I think, than the perception in Washington or more broadly in the international community that has tended to emphasize overall far more the progress that has been accomplished in Afghanistan. And in the end of the day, it frequently comes down to how people set their baselines. So no doubt, Afghanistan today is in much better shape than it was in the early 1990s at the height of the civil war or during the Taliban rule. However, many Afghans hoped that they would be far better off than they are today, and there is certainly a great deal of insecurity. Because of the insecurity and the great fear as to what will happen after 2014, everyone is hedging on all sides. All Afghans, both the power brokers and the ordinary people, are hedging on all sides. So you get situations where ordinary Afghans will send one son to join the Afghan National Army and one son to join the Taliban. Not because they inherently have a preference for one or the other, but because they can be so insecure as to who will prevail in their area that they want to hedge their bets as much as possible. So I do not believe, and I argue in the book very much, that the notion that Afghans are born to hate government and are born to hate foreigners and the entire project in Afghanistan was bound to fail from the get-go is fallacious. And that Afghans, in fact, do not crave to be ruled by the tribes, which often are, at this point, the tribal structures are often weakened, and they often do not wish to be ruled by either the Taliban or the warlords. In fact, when the United States invaded Afghanistan, the U.S. was welcome as a liberator, and people really were extremely happy to be rid of the Taliban burden. Now, one of the things that I found extremely appealing about going to Afghanistan over the years has been interacting with the Afghan people. And sometimes it's difficult, but very frequently you find extraordinarily fascinating people. And many of them, especially the young generation that really grew up and was educated after the civil war, after the end of the Taliban regime, can be quite extraordinary. And it is interacting with these people who are extremely hopeful about their country, who want to end the rule of the warlords, who want to bring justice, who want to put aside ethnic differences which are at the pitch in Afghanistan right now, that you really feel, yes, we just cannot abandon them. That we need to help them with as many resources that are still left on the table, with as much commitment as is still possible, so that the outcome is not simply yet another phase of civil war, which will ultimately have very negative repercussions for the U.S. interest in Afghanistan and the region as well.